KCC311, week number 3. We're going to look at grouping non-quantitative data. Let's start with an example that we've seen before. I believe this is in week number 1. If we ask about 80 people their favorite football team, I might get some responses. And we can collect them, and you'll see this is, I'm using the count if formula. We use that in week number 2, so you can categorize, collect data and count them. And if we use a count if formula, we can count how many people like each team. We can highlight those numbers. You can go up to insert. You've got all these different graphs, and we can create a graph. Now, this is actually not a bad analysis. This is a good way to see this data. However, I talked about this before. When you have a categorical graph like this, and there's so many bars, a lot of teams, it's a lot of numbers, a lot of information, it can get overwhelming. We're going to look at another way to take this non-quantitative data and group it so we can see it a little more easily. So I'll walk through that process here in 2 videos. This one I'll talk about the grouping, the categorization, and the second one I'll talk about how to link it back to your big data set. But first, you might notice I'm using Excel Online. Last 2 videos I've used Google Sheets. If you're curious, because Google Sheets, Excel Online, virtually the same program, here's how you can access Excel Online. If you go to your Blackboard, and I know that obviously if you log into this course, you get to this welcome screen almost every time, you'll notice up at the top there's this little link here for a website. You can click this Microsoft website, and it will take you to a screen where you can get into Microsoft Excel Online. You just have to type in your Kendall email address, not your Gmail or anything. Type in your Kendall email address, click Get Started. It'll give you a code. You'll be on your way. I can't walk you through this entire process because as a teacher, my login is different. However, I think this should be pretty straightforward, and pretty soon you'll land on a page that looks like this. It's a nice little spreadsheet. It works virtually identical to Google Sheets. However, just another option in case you want to consider this. So I'm going to work on Excel Online for this video. Google Sheets is similar. If you have questions going between the two, please reach out and let me know. All right, so here was one example, the football teams, categorizing those. And here's another one. I'm making up some data. Let's pretend I interviewed, say, 200 families with children at my hotel and said, how old are your children? And I can collect that data. Once again, I'm collecting it using count if. And we could make a graph like this. We could take this, highlight the numbers, insert, and we could create a graph. It looks great, but it's not perfect. There's a lot of bars. There's a lot of information. If I could group that data better, I'd be in better shape. So this video, I'm going to talk about how we group it. And this is actually non-technical. If you know how to use COUNTIF, great. You're actually not even going to need that much formulas for this video. Second video, we'll be back to the formulas. When you're grouping this data, what you want to do is you want to think about these different ages in terms of real-life, English language, everyday groups. So if I'm looking at these children, I'm going to delete those numbers. Actually, I'm going to highlight everything here. Notice I deleted the COUNTIF, and let me just put a little gray here just so that it stands out. One thing we can call it a reference chart. We can call it a coding chart, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to take each of those ages, and I'm going to call it like I said, a real life, an everyday category. So if I'm looking at these real young children right here, how might I call that in everyday life? I might call those toddlers. Excuse me, knocked over my microphone. So I just go ahead and type that. Oops, no formulas needed, just toddlers. Just straight down the line. And you notice that I have to do some typing. It might take a little more time than last time, formula, and then you click it and it's all done. But I'm just using my own real life experience. Look at these ages right here. Maybe we'll just go ahead and call those just basic name. Let's call those child. If you have another categorization, if you have another grouping, you're welcome to use that, because you'll notice what I'm doing here. This is quote unquote real life, everyday categories. 2 people can see it differently. So these ages right here, maybe 10 to 12, those of you who parents obviously might have their own distinctions for all these sort of things, but I'm going to go ahead and call them preteens. And then from 13 on, we all know, yep, we got those teenage children. What have I done right here? I have created categories for my data. I actually like this process because I don't have to worry about a formula. I can worry about, all I need to think about is my own real-life interpretation of the data. And if I go back to my football example here, this is a nice graph, but it's not ideal. A lot of bars. These are nice data, but it's a little involved. It's using the COUNTIF. What if I delete those? And I'm going to highlight this information again. I'm going to color it gray just to kind of make it stand out. I'm going to create a a coding chart or a reference chart. So for each of these teams, how would I categorize it? Okay, once again, if you think of it in terms of real life, if you're a big football fan like me, you know that each team has its own conference. Cowboys in the NFC, Packers NFC, Bears NFC, Eagles NFC, Patriots. That's the AFC. And if this looks like Greek to you, well, guess what? I'm not saying you need to do football data, right? You're picking a data set of interest to you, so you're picking a data set that you can categorize based on your own experience. So for me, I'm pretty good with football. I know those categories. That's good. I do have a child at home, so yeah, I can play this game too, categorizing children by age. I can pick football. For homework, I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to actually ask you to do a categorization as well. But what is this category? I'm giving you the information on all the McDonald's in the U.S., the address and phone number and a little more information. These are all the McDonald's in the U.S. I believe that is a couple years old, but so virtually every single restaurant in the U.S. And if I go to the bottom, you can see it's 14,000. So when you talk about big data, well, here we go. This is big data. How do I categorize that? Well, I'm going to ask you to look at the states. So the states of the U.S., well, what are we going to have to do first? Well, I'm going to delete this information here, and I'm going to have to write down each state in the U.S. Like I said, it takes a little bit of time. You're going to do some typing, but this process, at least, you're not going to need to worry about formula. So typing all the states in the U.S., okay, well, I could start, and if you got a list next to you, start Alabama, Arkansas, oh my goodness, now I'm caught off guard right here. Alaska is in there. Then we'll say California, you'd have Connecticut, you'd have Colorado, all these different things. I'm going to put a ... because it keeps going. I'll leave it for you to figure out all the states. But then remember, we need to group them. And I think I did it before. When I've got these groupings, I'm going to color it gray just to make it stand out. I'm going to color it here. This is my reference chart, my categorization chart, my coding chart. So Alabama, what group? Oh my goodness. Now, remember, this is back to English language. How would you group that? If you're thinking about Alabama, what would you call it? Would you call it the South? Okay, that's one way to categorize it. If you're looking at a map, maybe you say, no, that's more like Southeast. Maybe someone down here says, no, that's a Gulf Coast. Well, guess what? You're not wrong. None of those are wrong because there is more than one way to categorize it. You're going to pick your category. If I'm looking at Arkansas, maybe you say that's the Midwest. Maybe you say, no, that's the South. I'll let you worry about those distinctions. That's on you. That's English language. That's your own experience. That's your own understanding of things. Alaska, maybe you say that's in the Pacific. California, maybe you say that's Pacific. Connecticut, maybe you say that's New England. ... What's the ... mean? That means I'm not going to solve this assignment for you. I'm going to let you work through it. But you see what I'm modeling here. I'm modeling a coding chart, a reference chart for all the states in the U.S., for all the McDonald's in the U.S. You're going to create your own version of that for the week 3 assignment. So think about these examples we've seen. You know how to think about football teams in terms of conferences. Well, or at the very least, I do. But you see the principle. We know how to think of different ages in terms of, well, what do you think of that child? Okay, it's toddler, preteen, and so on and so forth. That categorization, that grouping data, that's on your week 3 assignment. And this is the part 1. Part 2, we're going to take these tables, and then we will need to use a formula. Check out the second video for the formula to connect this back to my big data.